Okay, I'm in there. Let's see if we got it. It's dark. I don't know if you guys can see me, but I'm sure you can hear me. I just wanted to say, guys, that I appreciate you're following me and you're subscribing. You know, I do it mostly for entertainment. I'm not here to teach you guys anything you don't already know, anything like that. I'm not a professional video maker or influencer or creator. Is that what they're called? None of that. I'm old school, Generation X, you know, get it done type of shit. Got my coffee. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, man. I don't know about y'all, but right around 2 or 3, I start feeling all tired and shit again. So I figured I'd tell you guys a story. Take y'all with me on a little ride out into the country. So I haven't always been a welder, right? Now, when you grow up in the country, I grew up in Tennessee, a little town called Sparta. I mean, it's little. Sparta! It's very little, right? I think we had, 5, 6 red lights, something like that, in the whole town, all the way through. And right after high school, I went to installing Prime Star satellite. This is a satellite we used to have, not the big giant ones, but pretty damn big. I mean, big enough. Back then, people that got satellite were people that just couldn't get cable TV. So these motherfuckers were out in the woods. A lot of them were so deep in the woods that you had to like go find an open spot, 30, 40, 50 feet from the house, dig a trench, all that shit, bury a pole 4 feet into the ground is the way my boss wanted it buried. Right? 4 feet is a lot in the snow, my man. I'm trying to dig a hole. I don't know if you're trying to dig a hole in the frozen ground, but it sucks. You got to have a tamp bar and just try to break that shit up, and then your post hole diggers. Anyway, so then Dish Network bought out Prime Star, and I went to doing that. It was a little easier. They were lighter, smaller. You could put them on houses more often, roofs and shit, close to the soffit. But some of them were still out in the field. So then, I did worked in restaurants for a little while, and then, had a kid, had to try to make some better money. So I went to installing cable as a subcontractor, which means you don't drive around in the van with the logo on it. You have your own vehicle, you provide your own tools, your own ladder rack, you buy your own ladder, all that shit, you own it all. And when I started, you actually made really good money. The cable company was just starting to do telephone, and that was a separate box from the router, which was a separate box from the modem. It was all separate. So you had, in each one of those, you got paid for. It was like $45 just to put in phone, and then you could charge for the lines. And a lot of times, if it come down just a cable job, you just charge to run a bunch of lines for people, because they only had to pay for, or they got 2 or 3 for free or something like that. But anyway, one of my first jobs, okay? Now, I found out real quick in my training that I wanted to carry a stick, so I made this stick, about that long, whatever, a few feet long, and I put a spike through it, and its main purpose was to go through spider webs when you're under there and kind of whip them up. It looked like cotton candy when you were done. Depending on some houses, man, it looked like a big bog of cotton candy, just straight spider webs, right? And then it'd have a spike on it in case you run into some possums or some motherfucker wants to get rowdy under that house with you. You know what I mean? Because I can get rowdy too. I had one friend that got bit in the face, right here. Fangs on both sides of his eye. Was by a snake. So, I saw a snake one time, I think. Saw a bunch of snake skins. One guy one time was like, yeah, I think there's big old snakes under there. And I went under there to go, and you had to go up in this place where you had what we call army crawl, or just crawl on your belly, and there was a giant snake skin going up in there, and there was like 20 snake skins around everywhere. I come out, I was like, nah, man. He's like, I didn't figure. He said, I'll get my brother to do it. He's pretty stupid. I was like, okay. So the main story I want to tell you was about one of my first jobs was in a little town called Bell Buckle, Tennessee. There ain't much to it. I mean, it's pretty much, there's a church, there's a courthouse, and there's some houses around, trailers. Not much going on, man. It's a small town, you know. And there was an old fucking house, had to be from the 1800s, that they turned into a bed and breakfast. And they wanted cable. And turns out for the first time ever, I think, if I remember correctly, it was definitely a new connect. Now that could have meant the cable there was so fucking old it just didn't work anymore, or it was shitty, or they never had cable. But I remember I had to run a drop from the main pole to another pole, then to the fucking house. RG11, that was the big boy. So they could, that's how far away it was. If it was over 300 feet from the pole, we had to run RG11. Well, so I ran that RG11 to the house, ran the drop down the house, put a new box on. I was proud. And this place, like I said, it was from the 1800s. I mean, honestly, original owners probably had slaves. But this place was that fucking old. So I ran the drop down, looped it into the box, looked really good. I was always proud of my work, you know, get that little drip loop in there, run it straight up to the splitters. Probably had a couple splitters, but maybe an amplifier at that time, who knows, depending on the signal. And then I drilled my holes to go in the house, and then some of them were going upstairs, so they had to go up and across the top of this patio. I had to walk on the top of it and on the roof and shit to get over to it. But you just tuck that shit under the siding. They had put new vinyl siding on it. And anyway, I had 4 or 5 lines going underneath the house. And so I drilled those, and then I went in the house, drilled the holes inside, put my little glow rods down in the hole so I could find them underneath the house. I go around to the other end of the house from where I drilled. The crawl space was on the opposite end. You know, say I drilled over here, it was over on this side, opposite side of the house. And if it's any indication of how long it had been since anybody had been in this house, the crawl space door was kind of hard to find because it was covered in ivy, you know, vines and shit. And so I cut all that shit off. I was wearing one of those little miner's lights that you wear, you know, on your forehead, so that way you can have your hands free. I got my little stick with a spike. And I go to, you know, the key to crawling under a house is you don't fucking look under the house before you crawl under there. You gotta fucking just go, you know, clap your hands, make sure you make a bunch of noise, so that way if anything's there, it'll scurry off or at least make some noise back. So I put on my music. I always listen to Coheed and Cambria when I went under a house. There's a song called Grave Makers and Gunslingers, badass song. It got me pumped, and I jump under that motherfucker. So I crawl under the house, and I immediately am in this little area that's pretty roomy. And then, you know, I can sit up on my knees, kind of look around, and there's a beam coming from this side of the house to the other side of the house, right? Big giant beam, like the size of a freaking tree, man, like 4 light poles thick. I mean, this sumbitch is huge. It had to be the foundation. Like, this house was resting on this beam. This is what I was holding this house up. And it was going downhill. So obviously the house is level, but the hill is like this underneath. So one side's bigger. So there's more room on this side of the freaking beam. And I didn't think I could really get through this other area. So I'm like, oh, cool. I'll just go around this area. I put the cables over the top of the beam, and then I was going to go around. Well, I get around to this side of the area, and there's literally a pond underneath this house. I mean, a pond. I mean, that sumbitch had to be a good 20 feet across, probably, you know, 6 feet, 7 feet wide. I didn't want to go for a swim to get these people their cable. I didn't want to mess up whatever kind of ecosystem, you know what I mean? Like, what is in there? Nah, I'm good. Some amoebas, some shit that's gonna crawl up my dick. I don't want that. So I decide, okay, I'm gonna try to find another way. So I go over to this beam, and I'm like, all right, let's see what we can do here. So the only way to get on the other side of that beam was I had to straddle that thing and like turtle crawl across that motherfucker, just belly crawl. I don't know if you guys can see me good. Looks like the video's a little dark, but anyway, I belly crawl across that motherfucker like, oh shit. And, you know, got my little stick, got my light, and I scoot across it, trying not to get a splinter in my dick. And I get on the other side, and I'm cool. So I start to crawl up in this little space. Remember, the house is like this, it's going uphill. Of course, my cables are way up in this corner, so it was like getting smaller and smaller. All of a sudden, I see some kind of movement out of my peripheral, you know, corner of my eye. Like, what's this? And I start to look up, and then I immediately look back down, like, oh, fuck. Now, I'll see if I can find a picture to post up in here somewhere during this. But there were hundreds, and when I say hundreds, this is no exaggeration, right? I've exaggerated a few things in my life. This was real, guys. Hundreds of cave crickets. I know what you're thinking. Why are these motherfuckers only that big? You know, not a big deal. Now, I don't know what kind of ecosystem, what was in that fucking pond water. I kind of feel like if a turtle had gotten in there, there would be Ninja Turtles right now. Because these cave crickets were as big as my hand. Like, I don't go spelunking, right? Hanging around in caves and shit. Mainly because you can get trapped in there forever. But now, because I saw the size of these cave crickets, if I run into some alien shit like that in a cave, I'm gonna freak out. Because there were hundreds of them. Now, they weren't all as big as my hand, but I'm talking, these motherfuckers was this big. And I don't know if you ever seen them, but they got this spike on the back. And the big ones, the spike was as long as my fucking finger. It's a big hook looking spike. It looks like they just fucking do this number, right? Like, I don't know what it's for, but I feel like it could just jab you in the eye. Like, the spike's there for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like for protection, something, right? Like, what happens? The female's like, hey, Jerry, this guy over here was talking shit to me. Jerry's like, yeah, there's nothing I can do. Well, what the hell's the spike on your back for, Jerry? I kind of felt like when we got together that you would use that to protect me. I mean, at least just hit him with it, see what happens. Yeah, I feel like they're going to fucking gouge you with this shit, right? Who knows? Things just don't have spikes in nature without using them for something. And these things, there were at least 10 of them that were as big as my hand. And then various sizes from there, right? Like this big, you know, on down to the smaller ones that you're used to seeing. And I mean, God, the body of it was just, I don't have anything I could show you. But it was huge. Like this big, but longer. So I look up and I immediately look down because I don't want my light to freak them out. And there are hundreds of them. They're right above me. And this ain't like from here to an 8-foot ceiling. This was like this close. You see this? Right here. I'm like, oh, fuck. I freeze up immediately because I don't know what to do. Because, I mean, okay, maybe they don't bite. Maybe the spike doesn't do anything. This long-ass spike that are on like 10 or 20 of them. Right? Maybe not. But if one of those motherfuckers jumps on me, all those motherfuckers are going to jump on me. Then we're going to have a problem because it's like, okay, they're not going to bite me, but they're on me. They're on me at this point. They're on me. Right? So I freeze up and I have to think about, what am I going to do? Right? I don't want to have to crawl back over that beam, come out from underneath here and tell these people, yeah, I've done all this work. I've been here for a couple hours already. But there are crickets, you know? How do you explain that? Like, these are the size of my hand. Are they going to believe you? And then what? One of your redneck buddies that's more redneck than you that works at the cable place is going to be like, okay, I'll go do it. And then somebody will crawl under there, no problem. And then he gets paid for all the work you did. So, nah, that ain't going to work. So I'm like laying there like, fuck, man, what am I going to do? So because I had backed up, at this point I had backed up a little bit to where they're all, you know, kind of in front of me. So that way if they do decide to jump, at least I got time to be like, ah! And run the fuck off, or crawl the fuck off. Right? So hopefully they'll jump that way. So I sit there for a minute and I'm like, okay, I see a piece of, a long piece of electrical wire. And it's the old electrical wire. We used to call it snakeskin. It's covered with a braided shielding that's cloth. And it kind of looks like snakeskin. So we always called it snakeskin. Sometimes you run up on an old house that didn't have the pole going up the side of the house. It had this snakeskin shit. It usually wasn't grounded. So we couldn't put cable in those anyway. They had those old, not breakers, but those old fuses that screw in. So I saw a piece of that there. And at first I was like, is that a snake? Did these motherfuckers kill that snake with that spike? It's something for something, guys, I'm telling you. I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this for something. Luckily, I had put enough cable underneath, and I think there was 4 or 5 lines. I can't remember exactly how many, but at least 4. And I'd put enough under there, you know, you want some to where you can get to it and reach it. You don't have to crawl all the way in that corner. I knew I was going to probably have to crawl uphill just from looking at the house. So, you know, and I'd done plenty of satellite to know. So luckily I'd put enough in there where it had curled up. So I made me a little hook out of this electrical wire. And it was pretty long, you know, it'd go up and down. And it was long enough. So I lay there and was trying to flick this thing over there, and every time I did, I wouldn't move my body. You know, my body was still frozen. I just fucking, it'd be my elbow and my wrist, you know, throwing over there like that was gonna make a difference. And here, these things would kind of jostle, kind of move around every time I did that, because of course I didn't get it the first fucking time, right? Like that would be just too cool. So I'm sitting here and I'm like having to drag it back slowly. I'm under this house for fucking good 30 minutes, hour, man, 45 minutes. You know, maybe not an hour, but I mean, I'm taking my time. I don't want these motherfuckers to jump down on me because I still don't know what the spikes are for. Like, even to the point of telling this story, I haven't looked it up. You know, I throw it over there a few times. Fuck, man, I hope these things don't. Finally, I get a hold of that sumbitch and I pull them. And I'm pulling them. And I pull them to me close enough to where, luckily, none of those motherfuckers had to go on the other side of those crickets. I didn't have to crawl under those crickets to the other side to shove any of these wires up. There was one over here to the right of the crickets that I was able to get to real slowly, get that up in there. You want to kind of bend your cable so that way when you put it up in there, it doesn't just fall right back through. And then the rest of them were on this side of the beam. None of them were in, you know, I got lucky that none of them were in the pond area. You know what I mean? The recreational, you know, the fishing area. And none of them were in the ooze or whatever. But none of them were right there. Could you imagine if I had to stick my hand up in there, those crickets? I'd be fucking dead right now. Because I'd probably, you know, they wouldn't bite me, but I'd kill myself trying to get out of there. I know I would. So finally I crawled over that beam, man. And that just stuck with me the rest of my life. Because I had never, up to that point, and I had been in caves. There's caves all around Tennessee, man. All over the place. I had friends that were spelunkers from a young ass age, man. They're still doing it. And they were just infatuated with cave system, and you know, we'd go into caves and different things. I mean, I've been in caves, but I hadn't ever. And guys, tell me, have you ever seen anything that big? That shit scared me, but I made it through it. And there was some different times like that shit happened, but that was, weirdly enough, that was one of the scariest ones because there was just so many, and you know, it would just be so freaky, right? Like, I'm not scared of one individual cave cricket, not even the big one, right? Like, fuck that thing, I'll smash it. But when there's hundreds of them, man, it's like, okay, one's gonna get on me, they're all gonna get on me, and then we have an issue. And the only reason that made me think of that was I killed a palmetto bug in my bathroom last night. When it doesn't rain for a while, sometimes I'll come into the bathroom in Florida looking for water in the shower area or whatever. And those motherfuckers are like that long. And the fucked up thing is, God made them, something made them where they could fly. Like, why would a roach fly, right? Why does this bug need to fly? It already looks freaky enough crawling around. And they're fucking indestructible, dude. I smacked this thing with a fucking, I ran into the Forney rep, welding rep, and he gave me a big old catalog, and some bitch had to be that thick, and I rolled it up, smacked it. I knocked one of his fucking legs off, and the some bitch kept crawling. And took off underneath the towel on the towel rack. So I see him, smack him, his other fucking leg comes off, and he keeps going. His two big back legs are gone, man. This some bitch is still crawling. What the fuck? So I'm over here like, what the fuck, man? Just beating the shit out of this thing. When's it gonna die? My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm trying to kill this fucking bug you sent me here to kill, and it won't die. So, whew, man, finally I killed that motherfucker. I mean, I cut it in half. I had to cut it in half. I went and got the bug spray, but then I remember that shit gives me a headache. It makes me feel weird after I fucking spray it. So I just put that can down on there and cut it in half, and then the front of his body was still trying to go. Those things freak me out, man. Freak me out. Just because they can fly. And they don't bite either, I don't guess. But one night I have a little music studio in the back of the house. I like to record and mix music too. And I go in there and I sit down and I'm good to go, and usually wear shorts around Florida unless I'm working. Welding, you don't want to weld in shorts. I had a bead go down to my shoe once. So, yeah, I don't mean it's for this to carry on and be a bunch of stories, but either way, here you go. So I fucking went in there and sat down All of a sudden I felt something on my leg, and I looked down, and the motherfucker's looking at me. And dude, I come unglued, you know. I'm like, dude, I'm not scared of spiders. I've been under tons of houses. Spiders don't bother me. Snakes don't really bother me. But these fucking, when there's a bug on me, dude, especially a big one, a big giant bug, Florida, man, they got some fucking medieval, just crazy medieval, like some fucking whatever it's called. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but some crazy shit from way back in the day crawled up on me. So I just come unglued, man. I've tore up a lamp. I've fucking started fucking smacking that son of a bitch, you know. And they just don't want to die. They don't want to die. I mean, nothing wants to die, but these things are determined. So anyway, that's my story for the day. I hope you guys liked it. I got a couple videos coming up. I had a request for my welding setup video, and then I got a video coming up for another guy wanted me to do a review on my Vulcan welder and generator setup, so I'm gonna do that. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. See you tomorrow.